Hello, fan art walkthrough. I'm going to work on in just a simple background. I just have a colors are. First thing to know is I'm working on a 5,000 page here. Is that basically pretty good at. If you're working on a really this, then it would select tool thing and follow your touch-ups that you have to do. Like up in here, a little pixel or two. However, this, the paint as this auto select bucket. Just before we begin, it's just because pretty much no matter spots in the eyelash for now. Color thing here feels best to you. Nezuko seems kind of pretty good. So again, in a lot more that will be open. The shading and adding some brighter spots, so you don't need to look at the reference piece and pick the exact color that you see, but you can use a little bit like of a darker base and then make it pop with proper rendering techniques. So go over that when we get to that part, but for right now we're just going to put in our little base colors. So for the ears, I like to just come down here. I like to change the color wheel to a little bit closer to red, and then I lower the opacity and increase the saturation. So that means I come on my little box over here, I'm going to come down a little bit, but then I'm going to come over to the right, because the further right you go, the more saturated your color is. So, in this kind of orangey color, if I come way over here, it's super orange, but then it gets less and less and less till it's white, but from top to bottom it gets darker. So you just want to grab your skin color, make it darker, make it a little bit more saturated. That makes it pop a little bit more. From here, we might as well also do this little hair tie thing. So it looks like it's a pretty light pink, so I think this will be a good color that we can mess with as we go. From there, on a new layer, I'll color in her face. And so see, like with this paint bucket, it doesn't get every little nook and cranny here. So we'll have to come back with our pen and make sure that there's no glaring pixels missing. From there, again, I like to just verify with turning on and off the visibility of what I'm working on, just to make sure, because we don't want any of our layers to be too close. Like, that's why I did the face separate from the neck, because when we go through and shade, my shading's not going to be spread across both. It'll be a lot more accurate, and there'll be a lot less finessing that has to be done. So just trying to keep my layers far enough away from each other that they're not going to get in the way. Her nails are painted pink, so we'll do that. And then we can work on her little sock portion here. So looks like it's a whitish pink, so just super, super light pink. I think it's even brighter than that. So I don't want to go all the way white on this, because even if, let's say, this is just a true white, piece of clothing, if you go all the way white, it's going to be harder to make the shading and bright spots really pop. You kind of can't. And so what I would recommend is don't go all the way up to the white, but pick kind of like a neutral color, either like a white or a blue or like a cream color. Use that as your base, because then if you want to highlight things, you can go all the way white and add some brighten spots. But then that way your shading and the lighting will look a little bit better. Because if it's just pure white, then to add some shadow it's not gonna look quite as natural, I find. So that's why I'm not going pure white, but with a super light pink. I might even make it a little bit brighter here. Like this. Because really all we're trying to do is just remember that, yes, the base colors are important, of course, but a lot of what's going to make the piece pop is the rendering. And so with practice, and as you learn your own rendering style, you'll kind of learn the sort of base colors you like to use to get the overall finished piece that you're looking for. So from there, we can kind of see, we can use this same color for the white portion of this checkered pattern like this. So we'll do that. Yeah, so we'll do that. From there, we'll just make a new layer, and we'll get these white pieces. So I'll make sure that the fold here is fully colored. And we'll do this one too. Like so. And just again, I'm making sure that like these little spots here are fully colored. I don't want there to be missing pixels. So do that. Again, verify what's been colored. From there, remember right in the show, my reference photo doesn't have these little bands on them. If I remember right, pretty sure they're kind of like a darker color, something like this. So, and could be wrong. I could be just completely misremembering. Maybe she just straight up doesn't have anything tying it on. That could also be, but for me, it makes a little bit more sense than just munching into it. So I'm just gonna put it like that. From there, we'll now use the red portion. And it seems like it's a pretty saturated red here, so we'll do this. And then again, we've got a little missing pixels, so fill these in. So it just gets so small that the paint bucket tool doesn't know to go in there all the way. From there, let's just do her main kimono here. So we'll pick a, looks like it's a little bit lighter color pink. A little less saturated, I bet. It's a little dark. Yeah, something like that. And we can make it pop more with our rendering. So we'll just get this main top part here, because it's separated, it looks like. So we'll do that, and we can use a really dark and red color for these sort of brown portions of her little leg parts here. Again, I still have no clue what this even is. This, these clothing pieces on her, I have no clue, so I don't know how to describe them, but they are brown, so that's what we will use here. Again, just make sure everything got filled in. But yeah, this process is a little bit boring. It's a lot faster than the other ones, especially when you're just kind of getting through it, but a lot of it is just kind of tedious, you know, so, and not really necessary to have a ton of explanation either, so try to make this as fast as I can. From here, we know that her overall coat is the same color, so like this portion right here inside the sleeve is just going to be darker than it. So again, I'm going to increase saturation and lower opacity on my little color selector square over there. Make it just darker. From there, let's finish out the kimono portion here like so. Like that. And then I'll go ahead and use this green color. It's pretty much perfect, so we'll just stay with this color like so. A little bit brighter for the bamboo here, like that. Then from there, oops, make sure that all of our wrinkles are fully colored. There we go. Alright. So, just kind of checking and seeing what we've done. So, from here, grab a little tan color for that part, and we'll take this dark part here so we can color in the area of her little cloak that's behind her. From there, we can add a new layer, put in these little string things, like so. Make sure they're fully colored. And finally, we will color in her cloak. So, perfect. I see it flew too close to the sun on my line weight, and so this is not actually connected. So, we will connect it. Alright, try this again. Okay. That is connected. So now it's just being finicky. So now, I'm just going to use my G pen to kind of reinforce this with the color we're using on our color layer. There we go. So I don't want to make that line thicker. It'll kind of break up the line weight too much. And we'll connect all of that. And then we'll leave this part blank because it's kind of behind her a little bit, so we'll just make it a little bit easier to render by leaving it separate. Then we'll color this, this. And I can see one of our clothes folds up there didn't get colored properly, so we'll quick touch that up too. So this part right here didn't get colored in, same with over there. So I'll just use my operation tool here for object. Click this, it takes me right to the layer that we need. I can fill that in. That way, especially like for the base colors here, it's kind of easy to get to where you need to go. But if you had a really complex piece with tons of layers, using that operation tool will save you a lot of time, so you don't have to scroll through potentially hundreds of layers to find something. So just keep that in mind while you're working on your pieces. Oops. And we'll fill in this part of her cloak that's behind her, like so. And then we'll do her hair. And again, I just have kept her eyes invisible this whole time. just to ensure that the lashes and stuff don't get in the way of what we're doing. So she's got dark hair, like that. And then the way that I render hair at the moment, I like to keep everything on the same layer, except for the pieces that are going to be darker. So like where her hair folds over and stuff like that will be a slightly different shade than everything else. So we'll do those separately, but for just the main portions of her hair, I just keep it all on one layer. It helps it kind of blend itself a little bit better. I like to kind of treat the hair as just one object almost. So something like that. And then from there, take a darker, more saturated version of the hair, like this. And then all we want to do now, just real quick to help us remember, because it looks like the ends of her hair kind of become orange. And so we want to select our orange color. I'll just use my hard shadow tool here. And so all I did is I created a new layer above our hair layer. I clipped to layer below, so now everything we do is just on that layer. So, you know, I can draw over here, and it'll only show up on the layer that we're clipped to. And just to help me remember that she's even got these hair colors, I'm just going to drop in that orange here. So I'm not too worried about how this looks right now, because in the rendering we'll make it look better. But for the sake of helping me remember when we get to that part that her hair changes color at the ends, I'm just going to drop these in. Again, use a slightly darker color for these portions here. There we go. So that'll just help me remember when we get to the actual rendering portion that her hair changes colors. Because sometimes, unless you have your reference photo up, you might forget. Which I do recommend keeping a reference up, just in case. But from there, I will make the eyes visible again. I'll use the same color for her hair for her eyebrows. Sometimes the eyebrows are a different color, but it looks like on Nezuko they're not. I'll also do the whites of her eyes. So for this, I just go all the way to the least saturated side that we possibly can. So it's pretty much as like white as you can get without getting super, super bright. So I'm 95 out of 100. So, So I'm really, really bright, really white here with this color, but I'm not maximally bright. And so for this, we can really help the white of the eyes pop, but we can still give ourselves enough leeway to where if we want to add like a spot where like the sunlight is catching or something, which I understand that Nezuko is a demon in this photo, so she's not going to be out in the sunlight, but if we wanted the eyes to be reflecting light, then we don't want to go completely white, because if you were to do this, you can't go bright enough to really make any light pop in her eyes. So we're going to go just below, so that way we have enough room to detail with some brighter spots. And from there, how I like to render the eyes is I go, so I know that she's got kind of bright pink eyes, but I'm going to go with kind of a decently saturated, decently darkened pink color for my base color, because the way that I render my eyes will really make it pop in the rendering portion. So for right now, I keep it a lot darker than what it actually is. So for that, our Nezuko base colors are done. And so what I'm going to do next is I'll collapse this folder. I've got a second folder beneath it, and this will just be where our background is. For this, I'm just going to use my lasso rectangular tool, so we select everything. And I want just a neutral background here, because I don't really want this tutorial to also be a background tutorial. I can always do those later if that's something you guys are interested in, but for the sake of just showing you how to, draw the characters and kind of continuing our how to draw an anime girl series, I want to focus on the character, not the background. So because of that, I'm going to go with a very neutral blue, I think. Maybe more turquoise. Really neutral, really bright, like that. And we'll just go ahead and finish the background here. It's just going to be real simple. So I'm going to select slightly darker on one of my airbrush tools. So we'll darken it here at the base. And I'm just clipping the layer. Technically, because this is all behind her, you don't really have to do this, but just out of habit, I still do it. So then we'll go super bright up here at the top. Like so. So really all I'm doing there is just making a gradient. So darker at the bottom, lighter at the top. Then I'll use a super soft eraser. Just want it to look a little bit washed. I don't want it to just be like an airbrushed gradient. I want it to look a little bit washed. So to get that, I'll go even darker on a third layer. Make this a little bit smaller. And just lightly airbrush that in. Then use my eraser to soften it at the top so it's not as jarring. And same with up here. I'll go full white this time. Kind of soften parts of it. And then I will decrease the opacity on this white layer so it's not as bright. There we go. And then from there I will add a multiply layer, select our color beneath her, and put in a sort of shadow here where she's sitting. And it's not like a hard shadow or anything, it just kind of shows that, you know, she's seated, even though we don't have like a actual background or anything. I guess if I wanted, I could add an actual hard shadow right beneath her, which I think I'll do. Just again, so we can see that she's not just in a sitting position floating in the air, but she's actually sitting down, even though, you know, she's not really sitting on anything. And so now I'm just using my G pen on a multiply layer, and I'm just tracing around her areas here. And we're going to have very neutral cast lighting in this picture, so we're not going to get too technical with our lighting and shading. So just envisioning that our light source is pretty much just above her, kind of looking straight at her. So our shadows are not going to be super deep, especially not in these front portions here. But back here, where she's kind of got this cloak draped over and her body's casting this shadow, it'll be a little bit thicker there. Then I'll just soften it with my eraser, my soft eraser, and there we go. So we'll call that good, and any touch-ups will be done in the rendering portion. So, but for right now, that's basically all I'm thinking of for the base colors, and really the only advice I can give there is just remember that you want to give yourself enough leeway when you're rendering to get the overall colors and expressions you want. So don't go overly saturated or overly bright on the colors you're picking, because you can brighten them and you can darken them in the rendering and it won't be as constrained. Say if I was here on this layer and I made it, you know, like, I guess, well, that's white, but I can see in her little base colors where it's like if I went way saturated like this, I kind of limit myself to what colors I can use to brighten it or shade it, and so it just ends up looking really bright and jarring. Whereas if you leave it a little bit more of a neutral color, you know, like this, then you can brighten it and you can add shadows and you can darken it, and it's not going to be as jarring as it would if you went too saturated or you went too bright until you really can't add any meaningful bright portions of it. So kind of stick to neutral colors as best you can. If you like a super bright saturated style, that's fine. It's just, you know, try to keep in mind that you want to give yourself as much freedom with your shading and brightening portion of the piece that it's not going to um, look too jarring. It's not going to be constrained. So just try to use neutral colors if you can. But either way, that is it for this part, and I will see you in the final one where we will render Nezuko. So see you there.